Welcome to all our friends and members of the ILA for our new episode of our talk show, coming live to you from New York City here. Dr. Arzhan Surazakov, who is based in southern Siberia, currently in Moscow. He is going to be talking to us about self-sufficiency in healing and CoMra technology. Dr. Arzhan Surazakov, I love his work. I love the way he presents the information, and it's really good to see you again, Arzhan. Hope things are all right with you.
Thank you very much, Abhay. Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's a pleasure. It's a real pleasure. And you're currently in Moscow, yeah?
Yes, I'm just with the visit in Moscow, so I'm joining from a different time zone. So I'm glad I'm here on time.
Fantastic. So today you are discussing with us what CoMra therapy is, what it does, how is color important, and how do you go for a self-sufficient world in healing and therapy. Very exciting, especially in these times, right? So I don't want to take up any more of your time, so why don't we hand the mic over to you, and please share with us your wisdom and knowledge. Really looking forward to it. Thank you, Arzhan.
Thank you, Abhay. So let me show my slides. Well, thank you for having me at ILA. I think I've presented at ILA conference in Berlin quite a few years ago, so I'm very glad to be here with you again. But I would like to start with a general introduction. What is CoMra therapy? Because it's been quite some time since I introduced CoMra to this audience. Then I'll talk briefly about my latest paper, which we published a few months ago, where we highlight the biophysics and what we believe is behind the effects, the clinical effects we're observing with CoMra therapy. And at the end, I would like to mention and specifically talk about self-sufficiency, why it is such a keynote in our technology, in what we're doing, and especially in these times. I'm talking about COVID, post-COVID times, and the times when the healthcare system is so overwhelmed. I work as a director of research and development in our company called Radiant Life Technologies. And the vision of our company from the very beginning, and actually the core idea that we came together back in the early 2000s, was actually to help people to help themselves. So self-sufficiency was like initially, our vision, how we can help people, but in such a way that we actually empower them. So in 2009, we introduced a technology called CoMra Therapy. Now, CoMra it's an abbreviation. It stands for Coherent Multiple Radiance Therapy. So it's CoMra. We introduced the first device on the left. It's called CoMra Delta. It's a device that combines low-intensity laser, infrared laser, magnetic field, ultrasound, and color LEDs of 3 colors. And I'll talk later briefly about these radiances. Later, they introduced a CoMra Palm device, which is also based on the same idea, same technology, just in a more compact body. And later on, we introduced the CoMra Wave technology. So today, I would like to talk about specifically CoMra therapy. Now, CoMra therapy, as you all well know, there are these radiances, the non-invasive radiances that are well known in healing. I'm talking about phototherapy or chromotherapy, and magnetotherapy has been known for centuries, and especially, of course, International Light Association plays a huge role in promoting this research and applications in practical areas. But aside from color and magnetotherapy, something we know very well, there is also very interesting development of ultrasound therapy. It also a way of non-invasive stimulation of the natural regeneration. And here I'm talking mostly about low-intensity ultrasound and low frequency ultrasound. So it's not like the usual diagnostics ultrasound, or the ultrasound, which is very strong and very intense, which is used for breaking up tissue, for example, like breaking up kidney stones. So I'm talking about low intensity ultrasound, low frequency ultrasound. And of course, low level laser therapy. It's been around since at least late 60s. And here in Russia, laser therapy was actually became very well known in early, I would say 70s already. There's been a lot of research done. And the first time the idea was introduced of magnetic infrared laser therapy. It was 1977, I found the first reference to MIL therapy, the combination of the two. And by early 90s, MIL therapy, the combination of the laser and the magnetic field, were actually introduced into mainstream medicine. Actually, it became so widespread that physiotherapy and in particular MIL therapy devices are, I would say, pretty much in every hospital around the country. So this is a standard of care, MIL therapy in Russia. And the last I checked, there are about 20 manufacturers of MIL therapy devices. So when we talk about laser therapy or magnetic infrared laser therapy, these in Russia at least, what you can call mainstream therapy, very well known, very well accepted. Now, the idea behind MIL therapy was to take one radiance, combine it with another, in this case, laser and magnetic field, and see how they work together. If there is a synergy between the two. So that's sort of the first seed of idea how we can combine different radiances. And of course, in 2009, we introduced the concept of CoMra, and specifically 4 different radiances working together in one device. And CoMra Delta was the very first device which we actually introduced into market. It was late 2010. CoMra Delta came into being. Now, since that time in 2009, lots of things we have explored about the ability of CoMra therapy, of how it works, what are the clinical effects, and what are the many, many, many applications. So I'm very excited to talk about, on different audiences, different diseases, different conditions. But what's behind these sort of radiances? If very briefly, again, I'll just recap. I'm sure most of you already know this research, but very briefly, I'll recap. So if we talk about low laser therapy, my belief is that the key effect on the living tissue is enhancement of energy metabolism, and specifically it's about ATP synthesis. And this is a very well-known study that shows that we can use low-intensity, low-level laser to restore ATP content in the brain after a stroke. Again, there are plenty of studies done to show that. And what's interesting, the same effect, more or less similar effect, has been shown in different types of tissue, different types of damage to the tissue. And the question is, so what's the fundamental process? What's behind it? And Tina Kara was one of the first scientists in, I believe, 1982. She proposed the first photobiological mechanism behind it. And now it sort of became more or less consensus, her views on what's happening with the from photobiological point of view. But what's behind it? What's driving this process? And that's where my research has been focused for quite some time. And in this paper that we published in November in Journal of Photochemistry and Photobiology, what I proposed is a combination actually of several known mechanisms and what I call this photomagnetic catalysis of ATP synthesis. And that's what my belief is the actual biophysical essence of why, when we introduce a coherent source of light, in some cases also non-coherent, And we can see that the efficiency of energy metabolism is increased by at least 2 times. Now, there are lots of obviously complications, explanations here, but the bottom line is that there is, on the left, you see a nucleophilic reaction channel when diphosphate, adenosine diphosphate and phosphate are combined together to form ATP. And of course, they need to be compressed together in order to overcome the repulsion of the two particles. So this takes extra energy. So when we have light, we can shift onto the extra channel, which is photomagnetic reaction channel, that basically happens spontaneously because we form a radical pair, which is highly reactive to particles. They combine very easily. And that's what's behind sort of the action of the light. Now, when you form a radical pair, it's with a singlet state with small s, it can go both ways. It can go decompose, so backward reaction, or forward to form ATP. And that's where the magnetic field comes in, because in presence of magnetic field, you transform from singlet, so-called singlet state, to a triplet. Now, from the triplet state, it goes to the ATP. So now, obviously, I'm skipping lots of details, but the bottom line is that we can create a condition in a living tissue where efficiency of ATP synthesis is at least twice higher. And that's what I believe the actual biophysics behind the photobiological effect, the clinical effects of laser therapy. And now we know we have lots of practical experience with magnetic infrared laser therapy. And the reason behind it is that there is a synergy between the two. Now, what's the advantage of combining two radiances? It's very simple. We don't have to use as strong as intense lasers, and we don't have to use as strong magnetic field to achieve the same biological effect. We can actually, there's one very nice paper I'm citing in my paper that shows that basically we can reduce the intensity of light almost tenfold and get the same result, same photobiological result, if you add weak magnetic field. So that's the effect of synergy of combining the two. Now let's go to the ultrasound. Ultrasound, basically, it's a vibration. It's a mechanical vibration that happens in the tissue as the acoustic pressure wave passes through the tissue. So what it does, it stimulates, we can call it micromassage. The actual mechanism is basically, it's very simple. When the particle is absorbing the acoustical pressure wave that goes through the tissue, the particles start to vibrate. And what it creates microscopic flow, microscopic movement. And as a result, all the metabolic processes that also dependent on the transport within the cell is happening so much faster. And there is very nice papers published recently, just last 2-3 years, that shows that actually we can increase by up to 80% the speed of, for example, cell restructuring. And with that, we can enhance speed of of tissue regeneration. Like, for example, in osteoarthritis, we can enhance healing of the wounds, and so on and so on. So therapeutic ultrasound, this is what's the basis of it. But again, the difference with the laser and magnetic field, we're talking about energy, ATP synthesis. Here we're talking about transport, which results enhanced transport, which results in accelerated cell restructuring. And now let's talk about color. Well, obviously, being International Light Association up here, and you appreciate the work of color very much as I do. My father is an artist, so I've been around color all my life, actually. And I observed my father painting, and it sort of became so natural to me to be around color. And it's like a language, because anyone can understand the language of color. So if we're talking about red, the red part of the spectrum, that excitates, that stimulates, that intensifies basically our biology. That's the red end of spectrum, sympathetic part of our nervous system. The blue end of is suppresses, soothes, slows down metabolism in a cell, and that corresponds, I mean, we can call it rest or parasympathetic activity of nervous system. And then when you have the yellow-green color in the middle, that's the balancer. And of course, for example, syntonic optometry, they use these three sort of groups of colors exactly for these purposes. Now, what we did in CoMra therapy, we didn't just use one color. Or for example, you would use, as a therapist, for example, they would apply red color to that person, blue to that person, yellow-green to that person. What we found is that we actually need to use a sequence of colors. So in CoMra Delta, for example, device, the first flash of colors will be red, followed by the blue, and then followed by the yellow-green. And in that particular sequence, we see that the biological tissue gets the message of regeneration. And it's amazing because if you change the sequence, the effect is very different. For example, we have a medical terminal for the Delta device and the cosmetic one. The only difference is just sequence of colors, but it's enormous. You can see it actually on your skin, how different it is. So, and that's when we come to the idea of self-sufficiency, because, okay, each radiance is well known, it's well studied, and there are therapies that are based on these properties of each radiance. They're sort of in their own right, they're well established. Laser therapy, magnetic therapy, and so on. And when we talk about, let's say, clinical application of each of these therapies, and they have their strengths. So, for example, ultrasound will be applied when there is, let's say, we need to heal a broken bone, we need to heal non-healing wounds, and so on, more of a condensed tissue. Laser therapy works very nicely when we have suppressed metabolism. You can use it in sports to stimulate, like, for example, muscle tissue contraction and so on. Color therapy works very nicely when we talk about, let's say, disturbances, imbalances in the nervous system, difficulty with reading, with studying, difficulty, with processing emotions. So color therapy works very nicely in that area. But what happens if you combine them? What happens if you combine them? And that's what we did in CoMra therapy, because each of these aspects, they work on a particular aspect of the one cycle of regeneration. Because if we're talking about a life cycle, of a cell, I'm talking about like a daily, from the morning, we have activity, during the night you restore. So this life cycle, the structure and energy and communication are crucial. All of these components are crucial because a single cell works as a united whole, not as a flow of matter or flow of energy or flow of information. No, it works together. That's why we combined all the four radiances to work in one device, and that's what's important. At the same time, in the same volume of tissue. And the vision behind it is not to fix a certain pathological process, but to enhance self-sufficiency of that cell. And that's the key difference. Because now with CoMra, we're not looking at a particular pathology. Like, for example, after the stroke, there is a lack of oxygen, cells are starving, there is no production of ATP, and the cell is dying. So that's a very specific pathology. No, we're looking at the ability of a cell to function as a whole. It could be any different type of cell. It could be a liver cell, it could be your lungs trying to recover after COVID-19. That could be your immune cells struggling to contain the virus. It could be any type of a cell, because the specific function of a cell depends on that basal metabolism, the very foundation on which cell exists, which is ability to self-regenerate. So what we're doing with CoMra, and that stems directly from our vision, is we're trying to increase the self-sufficiency of basically a single cell. Because a cell requires energy, a cell requires fast transport, to regenerate itself. And a cell requires 3 regimes of, you can say, daily cycle, which is activation, slowing down, and then rebalancing. That's color. So if you think about that, actually self-sufficiency starts from a single cell level. And with the CoMra device, when you put it on directly on a damaged tissue, that's what you're achieving. You're helping the cell to self-regenerate. Obviously, that supports function of the organ, which you're currently treating. And that supports the person. And that supports the family. So what we're seeing here is a shift from a very narrow approach, let's say, which is aimed at a specific pathological process, to a more general one, because what we want to achieve is a self-sufficient operation of a given cell, a given organ, and finally, that's the individual, that's the person.
Hey, Arzhan, quick question. Somebody's seeking a clarification here that there are 4 modalities that go into this. There's a low-level laser, there's magnet therapy, there's ultrasonic, and then there's the use of color. And the question is that if one of the legs of the table out of the 4 which is the weakest one? Which is the one that I can I guess a better way to ask the question is that, can you tell us which is the most important out of these 4? Or are they all equally important? Because I remember you saying that the low-level magnetic this thing can reduce the light by requirement by 10 times.
Yep.
Right. So is there kind of a weighted scale that you have for those 4, or?
It's a very good question. It's a very good question, because we were trying to experiment, like which can we add, which can we remove, and so on. What we found is that CoMra, as a biological effect of CoMra on the living tissue, is a whole. In other words, you experience CoMra when you have all 4 radiances.
I see.
And that's very interesting. It's a sort of emergent new property. I mean, you can say it's composed of laser, it's composed of magnetic field and color and so on. But if you take them apart, completely apart, let's say, only ultrasound, or for example, laser. The laser diode that we're using is only 10 milliwatts continuous wave laser diode, 10 milliwatts. That's really small. That's really small. There are no laser therapy devices that have only 10 milliwatts. I mean, device I'm aware of. Right. Because that's a very low intensity. And normally those practitioners who use laser therapy devices, they would go for 30 milliwatts, 50 milliwatts, up to 100 milliwatts, or maybe they go for a pulsed laser, which is a very strong bursts of energy. Sure. So you see, CoMra as a phenomenon exists when you have the 4 legs. 4 legs. If you take away one leg, you still have some effect to a significant degree, but it will be a different phenomenon. One thing I would mention, though, is if you switch off the ultrasound. Yeah. That's why, for example, we created CoMra Palm device without the ultrasound, because ultrasound is very important when we're trying to treat extensive damage to the tissue. That's wounds, that's healing broken bones, that's trying to regenerate like serious chronic disease, like, for example, diabetes, chronic arthritis, conditions like this that require structural rebuilding of the tissue. So that's where ultrasound comes in. It's really needed. But if you switch off ultrasound, you still can address a lot of issues that are not so, dependent on structural regeneration. You still have a very good effect. Right. So the laser and the magnet, these are the drivers because they provide the energy. So this is the engine in our plane is flying. Ultrasound makes it fly so much faster, and color directs the process.
So
because
color is not the in-house entertainment. It's, like in a flight
no.
engine.
That's like the tail of the plane where you turn where you need to go, because we need to send very specific message to regenerate.
Fascinating. I understand now. Okay.
It's very specific. If you change that color sequence, you get a different outcome, completely different outcome. That's fascinating.
So the engine is, just to repeat what you said, because that kind of gives me a visual which is easy to understand. The engine is the laser with the magnet. The
That's the
ultrasonic
engine in the plane that drives it.
drives it, and the ultrasonic is the one that makes it go to Mach 1, Mach 2, Mach 3 in terms of speed.
Ultrasound is the body of the plane. It makes it like, going through the air so smoothly, so much faster. That's the body, that's the wings, that's the fuselage of the plane.
Okay, and then
That's ultrasound.
the tail which kind of directs
Yep.
the direction is the color.
That's color that allows you to do what you want, because you don't just simply fly into the sort of blue sky and be there. No, you want to get from point A to point B. You need direction. That's what color provides. It provides a direction. And together you have a plane. You see, that's the difference. Because if you're talking about different technologies, like laser, magnetic, same with the engine, it existed before.
Right.
The planes were known, the static ones, it can just jump off the cliff and sort of sliding down, known for centuries.
Yeah.
But it's only when you combine them together, that's when you have a flight, when you can fly from point A to point B.
Well, that's really helpful, and I know you have another 8 slides to share here, so let's go on this.
So, okay, I understand running out of time. There is so much happening when a person starts using CoMra. So you just use 3 slides to very briefly summarize what's happening. I would say almost everybody who starts to use CoMra, that's the first thing they feel. It's day 1 or day 2 at most. It's restoration of sleep, normalization of digestion, and they feel how energy is building up in the body. And that's especially visible if somebody has been sick for quite some time, or feeling exhausted, or maybe it's a sportsman, after running a marathon. You do this treatment, we call them universal treatments when you do systemic points. And that's the first thing that people feel. When I built the CoMra Medical Center in Altai in Siberia, our biggest audience was elderly people, 60, 70, 80 years old people who come to our center. And when they get the first treatments, they say, look, I feel like a butterfly, like I have so much energy. Because it's so immediate, you actually feel how body elevates. It's sensation. It's like palpable. You can sense it. Again, because all the metabolism in your body, crunching, working very nicely. The second one, it's very interesting, pain relief. And I'm not talking about the usual type of pain relief which you can achieve, let's say, for example, with laser therapy, which is very well known for good effects on pain relief. So it's not only traumatic or, let's say, post-operative pain, but also something very difficult to treat, which is, for example, trigeminal neuralgia, herpes zoster. We did a small series of cases with chronic migraine people, which is not just people, they have headache from time to time, they live with the migraine for decades. We have most excellent results. And then more traditional one, of course, is the sports injuries, damage to tendons, to the joints. But what's interesting, pretty much all kinds of pain which have, I would say, bodily part to it. Anything from a plain headache all the way to serious damage to the tissue. And everywhere we sense we have very good pain relief effects. And the good difference, what I'm trying to explain to the person, because they have these concerns like, will it come back? Will the pain come back? Or will it become dependent on your device? And the good thing is that pain goes away, not because we block the pain. That's because we actually restoring the function and the structure of the damaged tissue. That's why the pain goes away. Not because we're just blocking the pain signal, like, for example, the usual pain relief medication. So you can see up here it's a dramatic difference from the approach, how we reduce the pain. The second huge aspect of CoMra therapy, I mean, I put just one big umbrella, call it regeneration of tissue, because there is no way how you can, because what we're seeing for the past 10 years is that we can enhance, we can speed up the regeneration of damaged tissue, I would say from 2 to 3 times. And that's everything from acute trauma to chronic degenerative conditions. I don't know, we can ask, we can talk more if there are questions on specific conditions. We have very good results with stroke recovery in our center. We have dozens of people who are struggling with recovery. Their relatives come to our center. We show them how to use the device, and most often they would take the device, go home, and treat their grandfather, grandma, with Delta or even with Palm, and they would get fantastic results. And that's sort of the beauty of it, because you can use it safely at home, because that's when you get the true benefit from regeneration. It's not something you can actually achieve in doctor's office, let's say 7 treatments and sort of you're back home. No, when you use it for a longer time, I'm talking about month in case of degenerative conditions, that's when we see a regeneration, a true regeneration of damaged tissue. And obviously, if it's acute condition, we can see it much faster. And the last big topic is modulation of immunity.
Right.
I'm talking about, on one hand, immune deficiencies, like the paper we published on COVID and using CoMra therapy for treating COVID. Even though it's a theoretical paper, by now we have extensive experience with treating patients who had COVID, and especially those patients who had depressed immunity or patients who have comorbid conditions. And we can say, oh, they all report they have fantastic results. All the way up to autoimmune conditions. Rheumatoid arthritis, for example, autoimmune thyroiditis. Now, the treatments obviously takes much longer. Usually it takes weeks to many months to have substantive and permanent improvements. But the good thing is that they feel the benefit usually within the first week. So we can modulate immunity, both in case of immune deficiency, we can elevate it, and we can normalize it in case of autoimmune conditions. That's amazing, isn't it? And that's because we're not forcing the cell to function in any particular way. We're only supporting the natural immune cell function. And then the cell, the body itself, decides what to do in this particular situation. So that's why we call modulation of immunity, not so much suppression or intensification. And then obviously there is cancer. I won't talk much about cancer. Maybe the next speaker will share more, but we also see that actually with oncological disease, there is so much good can be done, not only in terms of helping people who already underwent chemo or radiotherapy in terms of their symptoms, but actually in terms of supporting the natural anti-tumor activity of our immune system, which is struggling to fight with the tumor, with the cancer.
That's fantastic. Well, Arzhan, this is really great information, and there are a few questions that have come in, and there are other questions that have been coming to me as direct messages. So should we launch into the questions?
Absolutely. That's my last slide. So I just wanted to show that, there's lots of things we do in our company. It's Institute for the Study of Man. They're sort of working with the psychological self-development. That's one branch. Radiant Life Technologies working with the physical body, with the sort of physical recovery. CoMra Therapy is the main site about the healing technology. and I publish my papers in Journal of CoMra Therapy. So yes, please, shoot the questions.
Shoot the questions. Okay, we have 4 minutes, so let's do our best. Um, the the question that has come in is, can a person with cancer in past 5 years cure dystrophy of soft tissue in the spine with this device? So if they've had cancer in the past 5 years, 5 years ago maybe, and that caused dystrophy of soft tissue in the spine, can this device, whether it's the palm or the delta, can it help this situation?
Yes, it can. Yes, it can. We have a very similar case with young man from England who underwent a surgical removal of one of the vertebrae because of the cancer. And then he was really struggling with the pain, with the limitation of function, and he used Delta. And obviously I can share more if you can contact me later. He had very good results, and obviously, I can share much more.
Super. So I would request the audience member, our guest, to, as Dr. Arzhan himself said, you can reach out to him and get more information on how their system of these four energy radiations combined together can help so many conditions. Yeah. The next question is, what is the big difference? What is the big difference between CoMra to Nogier light and frequencies like Theralight, Microlight, and also the Sedatelec Premio? Is there, like, if you were to do a compare and contrast between, what would you say is the big difference? I think you answered it, but maybe you can clarify it for our guest here.
The biggest difference that I see is that with CoMra therapy, as I already mentioned, the phenomenon of CoMra therapy, the beneficial healing effects, they are on a whole different level, actually, if you compare to the monotherapy. Monotherapy typically is a fantastic tool for a very specific condition in a very specific circumstance. It's a specialized tool for specific condition. And when a doctor knows which apply when, in which situations, the doctor can achieve fantastic results. So they are fantastic tools in their own right. So no means I'm sort of trying to push them away. But when it comes to the, recovering function and structure of a cell as a single unity, we need to talk about not only light, which is mostly bioenergetic aspect, if we're talking about laser, or color, which is mostly in terms of modulation of activity, ultrasound, or so on. All these aspects are so important because you really, you can go only as fast as the slowest component. And that's the difficulty. That's why you need all three: energy metabolism, transport of molecules and structure, and then modulation of activity. You need all three components to get functioning cell. That's why CoMra, it's sort of its own class, it becomes its own class.
That's a fantastic explanation. Thank you so much. And I really enjoyed your example of comparing it to an airplane, and and just breaking up the components into what role they play in this journey that you're taking for self-healing. And I really admire the objective that your group has, which is of self-sufficiency, so that you could decentralize healing for any and many parts of the world. So, the ILA thanks you very much for taking the time and being here with us as a guest. Would you be kind enough to put your contact information in the chat? Because if somebody wants to contact you, it's also there in the newsletter. But for those of us who are we're going to watch this on YouTube later, they can have that down. We can insert it later in the YouTube production. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Arzhan. It's really wonderful to have you here. Good to see you. And I wish you all the best in your endeavors. And thank you for your time.